you guys for coming. This is the second of our series. Lots of familiar faces, some not so familiar faces. So allow me to briefly introduce myself and then the Rav. So if you got a random text like this week or last week, that was me. Okay, so I apologize for being a little bit aggressive, but my name is Daniel Zagi. Also helping us is my cousin Danny Zagi. So you hear there might be some Zagis involved. We're helping organize it.
Complex part is they're both doctors too. So they're both Dr. Danny Zagi.
And we're both from Northern California.
Peer pressure.
Okay, so we want to first off thank Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli for coming out here tonight and volunteering his time. I think a lot of you know him, but for those who don't, he is a huge Talmud Chacham. He is the rabbi of West Beit Knesset. When he's not learning, he's helping people out on a one-on-one basis with families and groups. Really a phenomenal rabbi. I tell my friends he's a once-in-a-lifetime rabbi. So he's really, really special and a real gift to our community. So thank you, Rav, for doing this.
Thank you.
We are trying to do this kind of regularly. This is the second talk. If you got a text from me, that means you're on my list, and you'll stay on the list until you tell me to get off. Now, if you didn't, then either please reach out to me, my son Yosef, the redheaded boy here, and then the other Danny Zagi, who's also been a tremendous help to us organizing and such. And then we'll get your phone number, and that way we can keep you abreast of other activities that we're doing. That having been said, I want to give a quick shout out to Meshuggah for Sushi for helping us organize and giving us a little discount and actually sponsoring. We are looking for sponsors, so the cost is about $200. It's a huge zechut to be able to do that. So if you're interested in that, either speak to me or the other Danny Zagi. Okay, well, thank you guys for coming and enjoy.
Great. Doctor, thank you so much for the nice, warm, and overly exaggerated talk that he gave. I want to also thank my dear friend Elda Shem Tov that has sponsored this graciously, this sushi that you're having. In the class, Bezrat Hashem, it should be food for the goof and food for the neshama. Now we find ourselves in the Aseret Imet Shuvah. The pasuk says in Yeshaya Navi, in chapter 56, it says, Dirshu Hashem b'imat'o, yera'uhu b'yoto karov. Seek out Hashem when He's found, and call out to Him when He is close to you. The Midrash says is like a king being reached in his palace versus a king being reached when he's out on a trip under the cover and comes to your village, comes to your town, and you could walk with him, talk to him, and ask him whatever you want, and tell him about your life. That is the mashal of the 7 days that we have between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. The Gemara says actually this in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yudchet, Gemara says Elu Aseret Yemet Shuvah, Elu Asara Yamim Sheben Rosh Hashanah LeYom Kippurim. These are the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. Now we all know that basically everything depends on these days. The Gemara tells us in numerous places that a person is judged on Rosh Hashanah. The same Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yudchet on page 18, the Gemara says a person is judged on Rosh Hashanah. All of the Ba'ei Olam, everyone is judged, and on Yom Kippurim you get sealed. The Gemara says in Masechet Betzah on page 16 and Daf Tet Zayin that the person's parnasa, everything that you earn the following year, basically is Kol Mezerotav Shel Adam Ketzuvot Lo Mirosh Hashanah Ad Yom Kippurim. Everything is said from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. The Gemara adds to that in a similar Gemara, basically almost the identical Gemara in a different Masechta, in Masechet Baba Batra Daf Yud. The Gemara there says even what you're going to lose in the coming year is going to be set from the beginning of the year, from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur, that it gets signed and then sealed basically on Yom Kippur. Everything is set to go from the beginning of the year until the end. Now this puts a lot of pressure on a person, knowing that really everything that is going to happen is dependent on this. Our lives literally is hanging in a balance within this 10 days from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. To give you an understanding of what this means, we have a certain sense of security which is shattered when we come in contact or we're informed about calamities or different informations, just to bring it alive for people in America. You know how many people are Rahman al-Islam killed in an accident yearly? 1.3 million people. That means that you wake up, you go to sleep, 3,300 more people are gone, right? The poverty level, 20% of Americans. That's 45 million people below the poverty level. Depression, this is a generation called basically the Prozac generation. Everyone is on depression pills and so on. Almost 40 million Americans, they admit that they have depression. So this is a person's going through life and realizing the seriousness of Yamim Noraim, of Yom Kippurim, is something that gives us a glimpse into what really is at stake. Someone asked Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, he was the famous genius of Europe. At the age 12, he knew half of Shas with Tosafot. They asked him which half. He said whichever one you want. Yeah, so he was a very capable person. He started really the Musar movement of the movement of ethics and Torah together, not just Torah without ethics. And someone asked him, he said, "Why you look so scared and so afraid of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah? What? It's a lion?" He said, "Rosh Hashanah is worse than a lion, and I'll prove it to you, because David HaMelech says, Gam et ha'ari ve'et ha'dov hika avdecha." David HaMelech was so strong. He had a battle, he had a confrontation with a lion, had a confrontation with a bear, and he beat them both. He says, your servant Hashem, your servant," is talking really to Shaul, he says, "your servant has ripped apart a lion and ripped apart a bear." But when he came to contemplation of the depth of the mishpat, the judgment of Hashem, he says, "Samar mipachtecha besari umimishpatecha yareti." Hashem, when I contemplate, when I think about your mishpat, I get goosebumps. I'm scared of it. So it is scary, he said. Really, David HaMelech says, he says, "Ve'al tavi b'mishpat et avdecha." Hashem, please do not judge me. Ki lo yistak lefanecha kol chayim. Because no living creature, really, if you want to really judge, is going to come out at tzaddik. So it's pretty scary, right? But the problem is, when we talk about being scared, especially in our generation in 2017, in our fast-paced microwave generation, we don't. I believe that we do not operate well under stress and under being scared and in fear. Used to be a time, I always say, used to be a time that the Rav gave a musar, and everyone would say he's speaking to me, and they would take it in. Then there came a generation that when the Rav speaks and gives musar, everyone says he's speaking to him, next guy. Now it's a generation that says he's speaking to me. How dare he? Right? It's a different type of a generation. What we live in, it's a totally different ball game as what it was before. So I don't really believe we do well under stress. Rather, I want to present to you a new method of thinking about the Yamim Noraim, thinking about Rosh Hashanah, thinking about Yom Kippur. The Gemara says in Masechet Tanit, "Lo hayu liyamim tovim liYisrael ki Yom Kippurim uchetu ba'av." The happiest day of the year, the Gemara says, is Yom Kippurim, because Lifnei Hashem titharu. Umi mita'er etchem avichem shebashamayim. Your Father in heaven is going to cleanse you, clean you. It's an opportunity. It's the Gemara says, the happiest day of the year. Like David HaMelech asks Hashem, begs him, says, "Hashem, please launder me a lot." Right? Herev kabeseni ma'avoni umechatati ta'areni. Hashem, clean me, cleanse me, launder me a lot, and fully make me white and clean and spotless. So I really think when we call for Chaim, we say, "Zochrenu lechaim melech chafetz b'chaim, kotvenu b'sefer chaim tovim parnasat tova." That is asking for life. So what is the difference between life and death? What's the primary difference between a live thing and a dead thing? Growing, right? The death is final. It's static. You don't change at all. A living item, even if it's not a person or an animal, we had in our science in elementary school, they had elementary science class back in my country, and they defined for you what life means in scientific terminology. And the terminology was anything that grows is alive, anything that does not grow is dead. So growth, being proactive in growing and having a positive reaction to things and the way we deal with things, I think is the best way to go for at least our generation. To get depressed and down and say, look, I've been there and done that. I'm 35 years old. How many Yom Kippurs and Rosh Hashanahs have been, I've been through, and nothing has happened. I'm still the same person, the same problems. One of my serious friends, he was telling me, he lets me say his name, Charlie Harari. He said one Yom Kippur, he came to the shul, and he's a very serious person. He really takes the Yom Kippur seriously. And he says, I came and I opened my machzor. The paper of last year fell out, and I opened it. And it says, last year, Yom Kippur, when I came out of Yom Kippur, I said, God, you got to be happy of having a son like me. God has to be proud of me. I'm going to change this guy. And I look at the paper from last year, it's identical with my paper for this year that I want to work on. Same averot, same problems, same examples even, right? So you say, you know what, I'm just throwing out in the towel. I'm just giving up. But if a person is really alive, that's not the way to deal with the problem of Yom Kippur. You got to make ways of dealing. How do we go about a favorable judgment, really, that we will come out and say, Hashem, I'm going to change. I'm going to be a little better at least this year. I want to share with you a few things that are all based on Chazal and the Gedolei Achronim. Nothing of my own, really. And Bezrat Hashem, through that, we're going to grow together. So now the Gemara says, in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, on page 18, Daf Yudchet, the Gemara says, Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah, and this is, again, we said that the Gemara in Betzah, on page 16, the Gemara in Baba Batra, page 10, they say that this 10 days is all basically one big deal. It's one big chunk of days that start from Rosh Hashanah, ends on Yom Kippur. It's not that Rosh Hashanah is alone and Yom Kippur is alone. So we're basically in the midst of the process of Rosh Hashanah / Yom Kippur. And the Gemara says, on Rosh Hashanah, people are judged like Bnei Maron. Now, you look at Rashi, Bnei Maron, Rashi translates, it's like sheep. When you want to separate tithes, you would have an enclosure of all the sheep, and they would come in one by one. It's a narrow path to get out of the enclosure, and the person that's there counts them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the 10th one is going to be Maser. That's how they count it when you have hundreds and thousands of sheep. That's how you count them to make sure you have the proper count and give Maser. So basically saying that on Rosh Hashanah you're judged individually, you go in front of Hashem. Then the Shlakish in the Gemara says, this is like Ma'alot ben Choron. When they used to go up the mountain, it was a very narrow path that one at a time they could go up, and you can't have two. So basically saying same thing, you go one by one in front of Hashem and you're judged. And the third one, the Gemara says, is Ki Chayalot bet David. It's like the army of David HaMelech. David HaMelech had instituted a system that when they went to wage war, when they went out to battle, they basically were all counted, and they would be given different jobs based on what they were, and it was not up to them, it was up to the general basically to give them off for that day, or to put them in the head of the first line, the most dangerous part of the war, and so on and so forth. That's what it is. So Rabbi Tzchak Petterberger, Rabbi Tzchak Blazer, he asks, he's actually a student of Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli, he says, wait a second, this Gemara doesn't make sense, because all of the things are saying the same basic premise. Can you open this thing, pass it around? I feel bad people are not eating. Yeah. They all saying the same premise. They're saying on Rosh Hashanah you're judged alone, one by one. Is that all? So why do you have to say three? Just say on Rosh Hashanah you're judged individually. Why do you have to say 3 different examples and take 10 lines of the Gemara for no reason? So he says no. The Gemara actually is saying 3 different ways that a person usually is zoche badin. 3 different ways that you could come out of the judgment of the Rosh Hashanah / Yom Kippur with your head up and be zoche badin. So he says like this: the first one are tzadikim gemurim. When you have sheep and they're all in one enclosure, who comes out first? Whoever is stronger, they push their way around and they come out first. So it says Rabbi Yitzchak Glazer, he says that a person that's tzaddik gamur, he's a full righteous person that has no flaw in his maasim, in his deeds. He is going to be zocheh. He's going to merit a favorable judgment from Hashem because he's a tzaddik gamur, because he's a full-fledged righteous person. Okay. The second one, he says, when you go. When Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, please teach me, why is it that some people suffer even though that they are tzaddikim, and some people prosper even though that they're not such big tzaddikim, which we call it the concept of tzaddik v'rado, tzaddikim that they have it hard, v'rasha v'tovlo, and some rashaim that they have it very easy and they prosper. And Hashem told him, you're not going to understand it. It's beyond the scope of a human being's knowledge when and why Hashem gives chanina, gives a grace to some people in judgment, and to others He does not. So He says that's just like a general. The general stands there. He doesn't ask you anything. He decides you're going to be in the front line, the most dangerous place. You're going to be in shirut leumi. You're going to work in the back over there and help with washing the dishes and whatever it is. It's out of the scope of our understanding. So says Rabbi Yitzchak Peterburger, these two, certainly now on a Tuesday before Yom Kippur, is out of our hand. You can't all of a sudden become a tzaddik gamur, although I have to open a parenthesis here. The Gemara says in Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Mem, on page 40, the Gemara says, assume that the Rasha, the town's wicked person, comes to a woman with a ring. It says, "Harei ad mekudeshet li b'tabat zu kedat Moshe v'Yisrael al menat she'ani tzaddik gamur." Right? It says, you should be mekudeshet to me, you should be married to me, if I am a tzaddik gamur, if I am a full-fledged righteous person. The Gemara says, this woman needs a get. Why? Because Shema hirher tshuva b'libo. Because maybe at that moment when he was saying, this wicked guy is saying, you should be mekudeshet to me, if I am a tzaddik gamur, maybe that moment he thought that I should maybe do tshuva, and that by itself makes him a tzaddik gamur. It's a very profound and penetrating Gemara in Daf Mem. That's just a parenthesis that a person really could become so close to Hashem in a very easy and quick way if he's sincere. But at the same time, for most people to change around their thing and become a tzaddik gamur overnight, that's a process that takes years, and that's not really practical. And the second one, like the Chayalot Shel Bet David, that's also not so practical, because we're basically saying we don't understand Hashem's ways. So says Rabbi Yitzchak, the only thing that really applies to every single one of us in this room and everyone in the world is the third one. Kemalot Bet Choron. And when people are walking up the mountain, and they could go one at a time. So who gets to be first? Obviously, we're civilized people. We don't push around like the sheep over there. So who goes first? Is first come, first served. Whoever comes early and prepares himself, he is the one that goes really first. And says Rabbi Yitzchak Peterburger, the biggest secret of being successful in the judgment of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is to prepare yourself. You can't jump into Yom Kippur and into Rosh Hashanah just like that. You can't prepare for Yom Kippur on Yom Kippur itself. You have to come a little bit prepared. So now we have, Baruch Hashem, still a few days left, so we could discuss a few items to try to see how we could, Bezrat Hashem, together merit a wonderful judgment. The first one is, that I want to discuss with you, is the famous thing that Yisrael Salanter used to say. He used to say, a person has two types of judgment on Rosh Hashanah. And really this comes from the Gemara. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, on page 18, says the following. Says, after saying this whole thing, that people are judged one by one, then the Gemara says, V'kulan niskarin b'skira achad. Means all of the people in the world, they're judged in one shot, in one snap. So how does it work? So says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, there are two aspects of every person's life. You have your own personal aspect, what you do, what you're planning to do, what you're currently doing, whether or not you're doing tshuva, all of those things. And then there's a whole other aspect of a person's life, which is in respect with the community and people who he interacts with. In other words, if you have a person that really does not deserve to live in and of himself, On his own, he cannot merit a new year. But people need him. People cannot do their mitzvot or their whatever. The shul doesn't run without him. The shiur doesn't start without him because he has to arrange it, right? Like our doctors here. Then Hashem says, I mean, they happen to deserve it by themselves. Then Hashem says, I'm going to keep this person just because other people need it. So says Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli, make yourself a needed player in the community. Get involved with the community things, with communal affairs of the Torah mitzvot, that you should be an indispensable part of people's lives. There's a humorous, cute story about the tzaddik of Yerushalayim, Rabbi Aryeh Levin, that he used to say that he would never buy life insurance, and he was hit by a group of salesmen. They wanted to force him to get life insurance, and he said, "No, I just can't do it." He said, "Why?" He said, "Look, I don't think I deserve to live. Whenever Hashem opens my books on Rosh Hashanah, I don't think I have the zechut of being signed for a whole another year. But my wife, Rabbi Tzon, she's a tzaddiket, and she really needs me. Without me, she can't get around. She's not gonna have parnasa, and so on and so forth. So every year Hashem opens my books. He doesn't deserve it, but Rabbi Tzon needs him. So because of her support of parnasa and this and that, Hashem gives me another year. He stamps me to life. So what's gonna happen this year? They gotta open the book. Says no, he doesn't deserve it. Then they gotta say, because of his wife, he's gonna. And as Hashem is about to stamp me to life, the malach is gonna say, oh no, he has life insurance. It's good to go.
Good to go.
So he wouldn't get it.
Wow.
Being a part of a society, being a part of society in a way that you're indispensable. People cannot operate without you. You're a part of the shul, you're part of the yeshiva, you're part of the kollel, and you're supporting, it's not a financial thing, just being there in people's lives, counseling people, helping emotionally to people who are downtrodden, getting involved with other people's lives. It says Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli is the easiest zechut for Yom Hadin. When Hashem looks at you, the Gemara says Hashem looks at you first alone, and then he asks himself, what does this guy mean to my community, to the Jewish community? What does he mean to the broader community? Does he mean anything to them? And if he does, then I'm going to keep him because of them, even if he doesn't deserve it himself. To make yourself a part and parcel of the community is the biggest zechut for when it comes to Yom Hadin. So that's really being the part of the community. The second thing is really from Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, not from Rabbi Shlomo. He says, he brings a Gemara. And he says, when you have Hilchot Negaim, the Gemara says a person could have sarat, he could have leprosy. And technically speaking, although the Gemara says maybe it never happen, technically speaking, the walls of your house could get leprosy as well. And if they do get leprosy, it's a whole system. Eventually, you may have to knock down the whole house, the whole wall, and rebuild it from new. But there is an interesting halacha in the halachot of sarat, in the halachot of the laws of leprosy, that bayit afel, if you have a dark house, that the sunlight does not naturally get in, and you can't see the leprosy, you can't detect the color of it, then it's tahor. You don't have to go bring candles and shine light on the bayit afil, on the dark house, in order to know whether or not the leprosy is tameh, is a type of leprosy that would render the house tameh. So says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, it's the same thing is with the person's inner house, his heart. When a person shines light to his deeds, to his good, positive things, and puts it on Facebook and it's all over the place, when he donates to charity or whatever it is that he does, then Hashem says, okay, so let's shine light on everything you do. But the person that keeps his good deeds, he's an anav, he's a down-to-earth, humble person, and he keeps his good deeds in dark, he becomes like a bayit afil. Then even if he has a questionable deed, when he has a leprosy, maybe question mark, Hashem says, this is like a bayit afil, is tahor. We don't shine light on his negaim, on his downsides, on his shortcomings either. And that's the zechut of being enough. The Gemara says in Masechet Sotah, on page 5, the Gemara says, "Kol mi sheyesh bo gasut haruach ra'ui legadeo ke'ashera." Someone that has haughtiness and gava, it's worthy of knocking him down like a avodah zarah. And the Gemara says, Hashem says on him, "Ein ani vehu yecholim ladur ba'olam echad." Me and him cannot live in the same world.
Wow.
You would not want to be on that list. That Hashem doesn't want to be around you. If a person wants to be judged favorably, you have to have Hashem on your side. So how you have Hashem on your side? The pasuk says, "Ram v'nisa shachen." Hashem says about himself, says, "I'm in the heights of the heights in Shmei Shamayim, ve'et daka u'shval ruach." But I reside with people who are down to earth and humble. Actually, the Sifrei Chasidut write, we say in our Tefillah of Rosh Hashanah, "Ki zocher kol hanishkachot ata, ve'en shichcha lifnei kisei chavodecha." That's in the Zichronot, right before the bracha of Zichronot, we say, "Ki zocher kol hanishkachot ata." Hashem, you remember all the forgotten things. You never forget. The Sifrei Chasidut, in a homiletic way, they say that Hashem remembers the nishkachot. Which mitzvot of yours Hashem remembers? The ones that you forget about them. The ones that you don't post and show everyone that this is the mitzvah I did, those are the ones that Hashem remembers. But a person is anav, is down to earth, and he does not hang himself all over the place to show people his greatness. Hashem is going to remember all of his greatness. But those mitzvot that you're proud of and you're posting it all over the place and showing to people, those are going to be nishkach, chas v'shalom. Those are not the Sifrei Kabbalah. Rab Chaim Vital writes in his Sefer She'arei Kedusha. It's a very thin sefer, but me'at kamut rav ha'echud. It's very quality, but very thin. He writes there from his Rebbe Ariya Kadosh. He says the mitzvot that you do that no one knows about, Hashem Himself directly gives you the schar. But the mitzvot that people know that you did and you show it to people, those mitzvot Hashem does not directly give you, the malachim give you. You have to go through different loops in order to get the schar. So zocher kol hanishkachot is that Hashem remembers and cherishes those people who their mitzvot is hidden. And if a person actually indeed is truly anav, then he becomes like a bayit afel, like that dark room that Hashem says, let it go. If it's questionable, we just let it pass. So that's the second thing. So we have so far Rabbi Yisrael Salanters get involved with the community, and we have Reb Chaim Shmulevitz to really be down to earth, not to be haughty, not to be a Baal Ga'ava. The third one is a Gemara. The Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat, on page 137, Kuf Lamed Zayin. The Gemara says like this. Kuf Chav Zayin. The Gemara says like this. Kol hadan et chavero lekaf zchut, and I'll translate, danin oto lizchut. If you give the benefit of the doubt to your friends, to your fellow people, Hashem is going to also judge you with giving you the benefit of the doubt. In other words, we are judgmental people by nature. We are judgment machines. We pass judgment on everything that happens to us in daily life. Someone does something, we say, oh, he meant this, he meant it. Even if you don't say it, we think it. We judge people. And the Torah says, Besedek tishpod et amitecha. Give him the benefit of the doubt when you judge him. And the Gemara goes as far as saying a person that gives the benefit of the doubt to people, when Hashem is judging him, Hashem also is going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But there's an essential problem with this. Because let's analyze this. What does it mean giving the benefit of the doubt? That means when you have doubt, someone did something to you, you could judge him favorably and say he didn't mean bad, or you could judge him negatively and say, oh, he meant bad. Right. When you have doubt, Hashem says, judge him in the kaf zechut. Tilt it to the judgment that's favorable. But Hashem has never doubts. If a person is going to the McDonald's, so if he's a frum person, right, you're mechuyav, it's a Gemara, in Masechet Berachot, there are other Gemarot, based on that, the halacha is that if a frum person walks into McDonald's, you're not ought to think that he's going there to get a cheeseburger. You ought to think he's going to use the facilities, he's going to get a cup of water or soda, whatever. But Hashem knows why he's going to that store, McDonald's. If he's really going to get the sandwich, So I am mechuyav, I am obligated to tilt him to Kaf Sukkot. But Hashem knows with definity why he's going to that store. So what exactly does the Gemara mean that when you judge someone favorably, you give them the benefit of the doubt, Hashem is going to give you the benefit. Hashem has no doubts to give you the benefit of the doubt. So I want to share with you what Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli says, beautiful pshat. He says like this: after Adam and Eve, after Adam and Chava sinned, beforehand everything was right and wrong. Now it's the Etz HaChaim, Etz HaDat rather, was Etz HaDat Tov Vara. When they would eat from it, the entire universe would become a mixture of good and bad. And therefore, post the sin of Adam HaRishon, there's nothing that is 100% good, and there's nothing that's 100% bad. Right? There's no Rasha that is fully negative and has no mitzvot, there's nothing good to offer. And on the other hand, there's no tzaddik, like the pasuk says, "Ein Adam tzaddik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov v'lo yacheta." Shlomo HaMelech says, there's no one that's righteous, that is fully righteous, that does good and that has nothing bad to offer. So says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz that it all depends on how you judge and what you decide to focus on. That's what it depends on. Every deed that a person does is mixture of good and bad. It has good in it and it has bad in it. You know what Rambam writes? Rambam says a fascinating thing. When Rambam was young, one of the first chiburim, one of the first works that he authored was a perush, was a commentary on Mishnayot. In the commentary of Rambam's commentary on Mishnayot, and the Mishnah that we say every day, Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia Omer Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Yisrael lefichach yirba lahem Torah u'mitzvot. Rambam writes, you know what this means? This means that one mitzvah, doing one mitzvah, totally good and nishma, without any side things and without having any other mindset of benefiting and doing shlo lishma with lishma. If you have no ulterior motives, one mitzvah is enough to get you into Olam Haba, says Rambam. But who could find a person that will do one mitzvah lishma? So therefore he says, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Yisrael. Hashem wanted more people to have Olam Haba. Therefore Hashem made a mitzvah out of everything. This way, hopefully in a lifetime, you will do one mitzvah totally lishma. So Rambam says. So everything we do is mixture of good and bad. And it depends on what you choose to focus on. So if you choose to focus on good, if someone does something to you and you say, you know what, perhaps he was tired, he's a good man, whatever, you take the good side of it. You choose to focus on the good that this person has rather than the bad. When Hashem comes to judge you, and your deeds, our deeds, have also a bad side and a good side. Our mitzvot are not so complete either, right? I was telling my son, the Mishnah says every mitzvah every mitzvah you do, you make a malach for yourself, right? And I told him, if you don't have kavanah, then the malach is going to be missing a hand, missing this. So my son said, does anyone have a full malach? So I told him the Rambam, right? It's a very difficult thing. So when Hashem comes to judge and sees the malachim without legs, without hands, Hashem says, you know what? He meant it good. He was tired, perhaps. It was this. He focuses on our good. When you focus on other people's good, Hashem's going to focus on our good. And neglect, so to speak, and overlook the chisronot, the lacks and the shortcomings and shortfalls. There's a pasuk in Iyov. To me, this is one of the most important psukim of the entire Tanakh. This is in Iyov, in chapter 33, verse 33 and 34. 23 and 24. The pasuk says like this. Hashem is judging someone. And Hashem says, Im yesh alav malach melis echad mini elef lehagid la'adam yoshro. If when I'm judging someone, and 999 malachim, they say, kill him. He has nothing good to offer. Echad mini elef, one malach out of 1,000 malachim has something good to say about this man. Hashem says, Vayomer, Hashem says, Peda'ehu miredet shachat matzati kofer. Redeem him from going down to the pit. I've found enough to redeem him. And the Gemara goes further. The Gemara says, even out of that one malach, if 999 out of 1,000 parts have nothing good to say. Just 1,000th of a one in 1,000 malachim has something good to say about the person. Hashem says, that's enough for me. I'm not going to destroy this man. Redeem him because that's enough for me. Hashem chooses to focus on the good. And honestly, how many of us do exactly the opposite? If you have 999 part good and there's one little thing that's negative, you say, oh, but she did this to me 20 years ago. Right? That is the midah of Yetzer Hara. You know, there is a Gemara in Masechet Brachot. The Gemara says in Masechet Brachot, and Daf Samech Aleph, on page 61, the Gemara says like this: a malach that's called Yetzer Hara, the Gemara in Baba Batra says he has 3 names. It's the same malach that's Satan, Yetzer Hara, Malach HaMavet is the same malach. The Gemara in Brachot says, this malach is domer kezevuv, is like a fly. Now, this is not its name, really, because the Gemara in Sukkah, Daf Nun Bet, lists for you 7 names of Yetzer Hara, which is the essential things that Yetzer Hara represents. Right? Hashem called him Ra, Moshe Rabbeinu called him Arel, and Satan, and all the different names that the Gemara gives for it. Even, Michshol, right? Sifoni, all the names. Zvuv is not one of them. So what's Zvuv? There are 2 Gemarot. One says all the names of Yetzer Hara, and the other one says this Yetzer Hara is like Zvuv. So I think it's clear that the Gemara is not telling you the name of Yetzer Hara. The Gemara is telling you how Yetzer Hara operates. You know how Yetzer Hara operates to get you? He tells you to focus, to be like a fly. What does a fly do? You release a fly in a spectacularly clean mansion, and there's one speck of dirt. He leaves everything and he goes in that. He chooses to focus on dirt, on negativity. And that's what Yetzer Hara tells a person to do. He says, focus on the negative. Focus on that 1,000th and one out of 1,000 that's negative. Hashem says exactly the opposite. Hashem says, if you want to be like me, teach yourself to focus. It's all about your perspective. Teach yourself to focus on positivity. Teach yourself to focus on positive things that people have. You see, it's all a matter of your outlook. The Pasuk says, Re'eh Anochi noten livnechem ayom bracha uklala. I'm putting bracha and klala in front of you. See that I'm putting bracha. And the Sifrei Hasidut, right? That the seeing of the bracha is half of the bracha itself. You could have the bracha but not see it. That's why the Pasuk says in Parsha we just read a few weeks ago, Uba'u alecha kol habrachot ha'ele v'hisigucha. All of my brachot, Hashem says, are going to come on you and reach you. So I have a simple question. If all of my brachot are going to come upon you, of course they reach you. They came upon you. If I pour something on someone, so of course he touched him. So what does it mean? Uba'u alecha kol habrachot ha'ele v'hisigucha. They're going to come and reach you. So I think the pshat is, the understanding is, that the brachot could come upon a person, and yet if you don't see them, if you don't have the right glasses, if you don't have the right perspective, it's as if you don't have the bracha. It's 10th amount of not having the blessing altogether. Just in parentheses, in halachic world also this makes a difference. There is a Rosh in Masechet Baba Metzia, in the beginning of second chapter in Masechet Baba Metzia. The Rosh says the following case that actually happened. Someone bought a pitcher, right, a copper pitcher, and sold it to his other friend. The other friend, the third guy, found out that this is pure 24 karat gold. It's just covered with copper on the top. And it's worth thousands of dollars. So now the second guy who bought it and sold it to him, he took him to Bedin. He said, well, pay me the rest. I sold you gold. He said, no, you sold me copper. He said, no, so gold. So he went to the Din Torah. Listen to what the Rishonim Sidrash brings us. He says that the halacha is that he does not own it, because if he didn't know he has it, he doesn't have it. Yeah. If you have the second guy didn't know that this is inside gold. Because if he didn't know that he had gold, then it's 10th amount that he didn't have it. So he sold a pure copper thing to him. It's the same thing with the blessings. If you don't know the blessings that you have, if your outlook at life on people is in a way that you don't appreciate the good, you don't focus on the good, it's as if you don't have it. If you think that people around you are negative people, then you're living within a miserable community. If you focus on the good, then everyone is good. Then you're living within a wonderful community. You're going to be the first and foremost beneficiary of focusing on good. But we're saying that the fringe benefit of it, the biggest fringe benefit of it is that Hashem says, if you focus on the good, when I judge you, I'm going to focus only on your good as well. So that's the third one. The fourth midah that we want to discuss is the midah of Rahmanut. The Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat, on page 126, the Gemara says, Kol ha-merachem ala biryot, merachamin alav min ha-shamayim. Anybody that has compassion on other people, when Hashem judges him, Hashem is going to have Rahmanut and judge him with compassion as well. If you're not compassionate, then Hashem is going to deal with you with pure judgment. Which goes back to what David HaMelech says, no one is going to come out of pure judgment, with heads up. So the Rahmanut is the first one. Everyone knows the Midrash about Rachel Imenu. We just read it in Haftarah, second day Rosh Hashanah. In the Pasuk, Kol nishma berama nehi bechi tamrurim. Rachel mebaka al banea. Says there's a voice heard in the heaven. This is when Hashem wanted to destroy the entire Klal Yisrael. He wanted to destroy the whole nation. And the Midrash says Avraham Avinu came to him. He said, you know how many people I brought under the Kanfei HaShekhinah, how much kiruv I did, how many people I did. I had Akidat Yitzchak, I had this. Hashem says no. Yitzchak Avinu comes, says I had Akidat Yitzchak, I had this, I did. Hashem says no. Yaakov comes, he says I had 12 Shvatim. Moshe Rabbeinu says I did the Nisim, the 10 plagues, the Kriyat Yam Suf, I brought the Torah, 40 years. The last person on the list is Rachel. Rachel comes in. She has nothing much to say. She has no 10 makot. She has no splitting the sea. She doesn't have the Matan Torah. She doesn't have Akidat Yitzchak. She has nothing. She says a basic story. She says, I loved Yaakov. Yaakov loved me. And because I had compassion on my sister, not to embarrass her, I gave up my future in life. I had Rahmanut on my sister. Can you have Rahmanut on my kids? And on that, the Pasuk says, Hashem promises Rachel, Min'i kolech mi bechi, stop crying, Rachel. Ki yesh sachar b'fulatech uveshavu me'eres oyev. I'm going to give your schar by preserving your kids forever. And it's going to be a final redemption because of what you did. It's the power of Rahmanut. You see, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz was a very emotional person. Aside from being a tremendous gaon in Torah, unbelievable scholar and Talmid Chacham, he was also very, very, very emotional. There was a certain site in Eretz Yisrael. Whenever he went to that site and passed by, he started crying. It was not Kotel HaMaravi, it was not Kever Rachel, it was not Kever Ramir Balanes, none of those. If you would put it on for guests, probably no one would get it. In Nachal Kidron, there are different matzevot over there, different monuments. One of them is Matzevet Yad Avshalom. It's a monument that Avshalom, one of the sons of David HaMelech, made for himself to be remembered when he was alive. Now everyone knows Avshalom was the biggest Rasha that you could get. He led an almost successful revolt against David HaMelech. He wanted to cut off the head of his father. He wanted to kill David HaMelech, and he was almost successful. And when they were fighting and going to battle with him, he said, don't kill my son if you see him. But Yoav ben Tzruya, the head of the army of David HaMelech, didn't listen to him. He stabbed him several times, he killed him. When David HaMelech heard that Avshalom was killed, he fell on the floor, he started crying. And he said, Avshalom, Beni Avshalom, Mi yiten muti tachtech Beni Avshalom. I wish I would have died instead of you. 7 times he mentions his name. Chazal tells us with those 7 times, and crying, he brought him from Gehinam to Gan Eden. But the point is, the rachameh of the Rahmanut, the power of compassion of a father. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz would say, if a son that went against the father and he led a revolt, the father cries and says, Mi ten muti tachtecha. I wish I would have died. Hashem, can't you? We are the sons, and we are not up to the standards that you set, maybe, but can't you have Rahmanut on us? That's the power of Rahmanut. When a person has compassion on others, if a person has Rahmanut, Hashem will have Rahmanut on him as well. And the final thing, the fifth thing that I want to discuss, my own addition, is the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Now, everyone knows that the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is great, right? Indeed, the Mishnah says in Masechet Pe'ah, it says all of the mitzvot that ochel mipirotein ba'olam hazeh v'hakeren kayemet v'olam haba, which we say in Shacharit, then the Mishnah says the Talmud Torah keneged kulan. Talmud Torah is equal to all the mitzvot. The Gemara also says in Erachin that just like Lashon Hara weighs down, this is the Gemara in Erachin Daf Tet Zayin. The Gemara says that just like Lashon Hara is equal with the three cardinal sins, Talmud Torah weighs down against all of the mitzvot. We could go on and on with the Gemarot. The Gemara says in Masechet Ketubot and Daf Kuf Yud Aleph that Talmud Torah is the only zechut for Tchiyat HaMetim. The Gemara says in Sotah and Daf Chav Aleph, the Gemara says the ladies that don't have mitzvah of Talmud Torah, how do they get Olam Haba? The Gemara is wondering. It says if you don't have Talmud Torah, your Olam Haba is lacking. So the ladies don't have mitzvah of Talmud Torah. How do they get it? The Gemara says, because they push their husbands to learn and they send their kids to yeshiva and they wait for their husbands. That's the importance of Talmud Torah. That we all know. The truth is, the Ramchal goes as far as saying, this is Ramchal in Derech Hashem, in Chelik Dalet Perek Bet. The Ramchal says, when Hashem created the world, as a davar siguli, like a sigula, Hashem tied the greatest of the energies in the world, the shefa, the world was created through that shefa. Hashem tied it to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. When you learn Torah, that shefa pours down. And the Maharal says a similar thing. Maharal says in the Sefer, the thin Sefer has Netivot Olam in Netiva Torah in the beginning. He says, what is this Mishnah, the Memra that we say, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. He says, what does the Talmid Chacham know about politics and Trump and Hillary? What does he know about anything? What do you mean Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam? They add and increase the level of peace in the world. Global peace. So it says Maharal, it says because when Hashem created the world was shalem. There was no wars, no sickness, nothing. Because of the sin of Adam HaRishon and subsequent sins, there are lacks and defects in the creation. But that shefa, that spiritual energy that Hashem created the world, is tied into the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So when you learn Torah, you're pushing the world to that state of shlemut, that state of being complete. So therefore, a person that learns Torah has that zechut of bringing the shefa down. But tonight, I want to discuss, just add one last thing, which has to do with Yom Kippur. Aside from being the biggest mitzvah, Talmud Torah has a zechut of kapara. Here's an example. The Midrash says in Yalkut Shimoni, in Sefer Hosheya, in Siman Tafkuf Chav Bet, the Midrash says that when you learn Torah, Hashem says, Chaviv alai Talmud Torah shelachem. When you learn Torah, that's more dear to me than all of the korbanot that they brought in the Beit HaMikdash. All of elef olot yaleh Shlomo. Thousands of korban olas Shlomo would bring. Hashem says, I don't want any of those. And the Midrash says, what's the pasuk that says, Zot Torah, la'olah, la'chata, la'asham, la'milum, la'zerash, la'shamim. It says, Zot Torah, this is Torah, if you learn Torah, la'olah, you don't need olah, you don't need shlamim, you don't need any of the korbanot. I forgive all of the sins. And that's really a powerful thing when we contemplate the zechut of these days and what could be accomplished through this 3-4 days that we've left Yom Kippur. One of the biggest zechuyot that the person could tap in to have the favorable judgment is the zechut of the Torah. The zechut of the Torah is the biggest shield in front of everything. And Hashem says, if you learn Torah, I let go of it. The Midrash says in Vayikra Rabbah, what does a person do if he's chayav mitah b'dei shamayim? If he has done severe averot that he needs to get mitah b'dei shamayim chas v'shalom, the Midrash says if he used to learn one perek, he should learn 2 prakim. If he learned 1 hour, he should learn an hour and a half. And then Hashem gives him kapara. And I end with this chida, an unbelievable chida. the Chida is a Perush on Masechet Avot and Avot de Rabbi Natan. It's called Kisei Rachamim. In Sefer Kisei Rachamim, he brings from Shelah Kadosh in the name of Arizal. He says all of the Yesurim and Sibufim, Taniyot, to fast and to bother yourself and go roll in the ice and so on and so forth, that the Mekubalim wrote and the Rishonim wrote about people who do Averot, is only if you don't learn Torah. If a person sincerely is dedicated to Torah, he doesn't need any of those. The Zechut of the Torah is the biggest kapara. And especially nowadays that we don't have the Bet HaMikdash, we don't have that Sa'ir HaMishtaleach, all the things that we're going to mention in the Musaf of Yom Kippur, what we hang on to, it's Etz Chai Mihi L'Machazikim Ba. That's what we hang on to. We hang on to the Zechut of the Torah. And this is the biggest Zechut. We have almost 11 o'clock at night, and we have 50, 60 people sitting learning with enthusiasm. That's the biggest Zechut in Mitzvah Hashem. This Zechut should be Magen on everyone. And we say, Maral writes, why do we blow shofar on Yom Kippur? Blowing shofar is for Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur, the Torah says once in 50 years, at the end of Shnat Yovel, you blow shofar for the Avadim, for the slaves to go out. So says the Maral, we blow the shofar every year, although you have to do it once in 50 years only. Why do we do it every year at the end of Yom Kippur? He says we do it every year to show ourselves that just like this shofar used to free the slaves, we don't want to be slaves to the world around us. We want to be productive, progressive, and vibrant, just like we started with. Instead of getting depressed and being afraid of Yom Kippur, let's recognize and realize Yom Kippur, the Gemara says, the best day of the year. And you could take it on if you are vibrant, if you have vitality, if you have productivity and development. If you take all of these messages and we say, you know what, this Yom Kippur I'm going to make it different. I'm not going to just sit by and say, oh, Yom Kippur, Al-Khijra. I'm going to make it a different Yom Kippur with happiness, with zeal, with real power of willpower to do something different. And Bezrat Hashem, through that Zechut, we're going to be Zocher, all of us, to a Ktiva v'Chatima Tova, a wonderful year of health and happiness. Amen. Ki Yehi Ratzon. רבי חנניה בן עקשיא אומר רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל, לפיכך ירבה להם תורה ומצוות, שנאמר אדוני חפץ למען סדרו יגדיל תורה וידיר.